Jason Munson here, Playing with Fire, where we discuss success accelerants and risk retardants. I'm here with my good friend Lee Morgan, who is one of the owners of the very prestigious Laughlin Associates. Yes?
Yes.
Reno-based?
Yes, Reno-based, yep.
And so first off, what do you guys do over at Laughlin?
So we are in the asset protection business. We help small business owners make sure that their assets are protected from business issues and from personal issues. Our goal is to separate personal liability from your business liability. Asset protection.
Okay. So with that, you deal 100% with business owners.
Yes.
Is that right?
That is correct, yeah.
Okay. And so you literally thousands of them that you've dealt with over time.
Yes.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So what's the number one, just in your experience, what's the number one thing that people do wrong that where they're taking the biggest risk, where they really shouldn't be? What's that big no-no?
Well, I think that the big no-no from my perspective in my business is that they'll jump into something, they'll invest money, they'll invest time without being properly structured. And having that solid foundation is the most critical thing you can do, because that is the thing that separates your business liability from your personal assets, and vice versa.
Okay, so when you say it not properly structured, so that would be like going into business and setting up a sole proprietorship.
Sure.
Okay.
Or even forming an entity like an LLC or corporation, but then not following through with all of the steps necessary to ensure that entity is valid, and that it is providing you with the asset protection it is designed to give you.
Okay, so this leads me to another question, and I'm going to be a little bit of a smart aleck here.
Right.
What is the most risky, the most dangerous business setup that you can have?
It's probably being a sole proprietorship.
What about a partnership?
That can be very risky too. And that depends on your partner.
Okay, so
For sure.
Because that's one thing I heard from day one in business, that you're liable, essentially in a partnership. You're liable for everything that your partner does.
Right.
And you could be sued or go to jail.
Yes. If you're not properly structured.
If you're not properly structured, with a partnership. So if you're, what advice would you give to mitigate the risk of a partnership? Let's say if you're thinking of starting one and doing it a partnership first, and then number two, if you're already in a partnership, what can you do to mitigate risk?
So starting a partnership is I think most people begin with this goal, but having a very clear understanding of what the partnership is going to do, what the goals are, being committed and to those goals with your partner, and having a clear understanding of the outcome that you're both seeking. So that's from a philosophical kind of a standpoint, and then from a practical standpoint, having a written agreement. The more things that are in writing, and the better off you are.
So what sort of things would you have in a written agreement with a partnership?
Well, your partnership agreement, if you're forming a partnership, should be very clear. Same if your partnership is being put into an LLC, the operating agreement should be very clear about who does what, how the money works, when success is reached, these are the outcomes. All those things should be taken into consideration to avoid any misunderstandings going forward.
And do you guys do that at Laughlin? If somebody starts a partnership, let's say they do an LLC where they got a partner in it, do you guys help them to develop the partnership agreements and stuff like that, or is there an attorney that would do that?
Yeah. So in a partnership agreement that is specific or is for a specific purpose, which should be done by a lawyer. We would step in once that is done and form all the other parts and pieces and keep the ongoing compliance of that entity, partnership, LLC, moving forward.
Okay. And so if somebody already has a partnership, but they haven't structured it correctly, then they can come to you
Yes.
and help get that structured
Yes.
correctly with the cooperation of a good attorney.
Of a good attorney, yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And so that's going to help mitigate the risk that they would have from outside and inside. You know,
Yes.
basically, so that people will know how they're cooperating with each other, and
Right.
and then also protecting
From outside stuff. So I have 7 children, and at any one time I've had 3 to 4 teenage drivers, which is a lot of liability running around the road. And so my partner wants to I want to make sure that my personal issues are insulated from our business. Our business operation, and so that's that part of that asset protection that is very important, that structure, so it keeps, if anything happens to one of my teenage drivers and I'm sued, it's not going to bleed over into our business, my partner and myself's business. So that's important.
I heard it said, it's like, once you get to 3 kids, like, people are like, oh, it's wonderful, you got 3 kids, but like once you go to 4, they're like, so that's how you want to live your life.
Yeah. And so when I don't know what it says about someone with 7 kids.
7 kids.
Yeah.
Oh man.
You're insane, I guess.
Yeah, I guess there's some therapy needed.
Yeah.
Well, was needed anyway. Too late now.
Right.
Okay, so on the other side of things, you guys deal with some real successful companies, some real successful business owners. And what is that top tier doing so well that that other business owners could aspire to be, or that they should try and do, or they should copy? That top like 2%, that's really doing it
Killing
well.
it.
Really killing it. What are they doing?
Oh, that's a great question, because we strive to be in that top 2%, and we're not there yet. We're trying to get there. I think I think they're good at planning. They're good at executing a plan. They're those people who we find are very successful. They're always looking for the next opportunity for themselves and their business. They're good networkers. They're good salespeople. It's kind of like the trifecta. They have all of these talents, and they're able to employ them in their business and through their team, and achieve success that way.
Some of the ones that I've listened to on other podcasts, and other ones that I've met in person, they have a really they have a very sharp awareness of what their gifts and talents are, and applying those into their business and into what they're doing. So what would you say about that for somebody who maybe is an aspiring entrepreneur, or maybe just getting into it? How important is it, or what level of importance is there on knowing your gifts and talents and knowing what you're not really good at?
Well, I think that's huge. That's critical. I think if you have a very clear understanding of what you're good at and what you're not good at, then the things that you're not good at, you can bring in people to help you and shore that part of it up, so that you can be successful.
But I mean, if you're not good at something, you can either bring somebody in, or you can go learn. You can learn it yourself.
Yeah.
So what are the advantages and disadvantages of learning to do it yourself versus bringing in those people?
Well, I think there's the disadvantage that I've seen over the years is there are some things that I am not naturally gifted at, but I can learn. But I still, even though I've learned them, I've studied them, and so my ability has increased, I'm still not as good as someone with a more natural ability in a different area. It's like sales. I don't consider myself a naturally gifted salesperson, if there is such a thing, but sales is something that can be learned. But there's also people who are very gifted at reading other people and being open and communicating effectively. And so, I think you can learn some things, but can you really be as efficient as someone who has those specific talents? I think maybe not.
So that kind of comes into or what comes to mind for me is that concept of solopreneur. You know, the person who's trying to fill all the roles and all the hats. Which many times when somebody is first starting out,
that's how it has to be.
They have to.
Right.
Yeah. But that's also kind of where you're really playing with fire.
Right. Yeah.
You know, because it could be the best worst thing because you're utilizing some of your talents, but you might be terrible at something else.
Right.
You know. So what about, like, if you don't mind sharing, like, you personally, what is your gift or talent that you bring to the business? What is that thing that you know that you're really good at that you're never going to outsource?
So I think for me specifically, I think I am a plow horse. That's how I kind of have it in my head.
What do you mean by that? I've never heard somebody say that.
I can pull the plow all day long, every day. I don't, I don't get too discouraged when I'm at the bottom of the field and I've got to go to the top of the field, and then I don't get so discouraged when I'm at the top of the field and I've got to pull the plow all the way back to the bottom of the field. And so, I'm a fairly steady person. I don't get overly excited, and I don't get overly depressed. I'm just plowing along. And I've found as you plow along, it may seem like the finish line or the goal is far off in the distance, but if you just keep plodding along, and sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's harder, you eventually get to the goal, or you eventually get to the finish line. I've run a couple marathons. Okay. And it's very much like running a marathon in my mind. It's just picking the pace that you can do, and then following through with that pace throughout the whole race.
And just one step at a
one step at a time. Yeah, and then you get there, and then you can look up and decide, I'm going to run this race, or I'm going to achieve this new goal now that this has been conquered.
I've seen that, or in my own personal experience, is that when you look at the scope of maybe something that you're trying to do, and you see it like, oh wow, I have this vision, and you look at all the components, and it could just be daunting. It could just be so overwhelming. Yeah. But when you just break it down and say, okay, well, what is the first step, and can I take that step? Right. And like Bill Gates, said in his in that Harvard commencement speech, is that sometimes you don't see how all the dots line up until sometime further down the road. Right. Sort of thing. So, yeah. I mean, has that been your experience of, like, you start out on something and you kind of have an idea and the scope, but it develops, it comes to life and develops, as you start making the progress, and what comes out later is not what you thought it would be.
Sure. The dots line up to a different place that you thought you were going, but the dots have taken you to a different place, which as you're plodding along, you can look up and say, this is taking me in this direction, and your goals can change, the finish line can change, and that, I think, as long as you're okay with that, I think that's a good thing. Awesome. I think as going through life, as you learn, as you make mistakes and correct those mistakes or learn from those mistakes, that's a big change in your paradigm that can shift the goals, change the finish line for you.
Absolutely. Well, we could just sit here and talk all afternoon about this
Probably
stuff. So,
anyway, yeah.
So, Lieb, I really do appreciate you coming on the vlog here and with Playing with Fire, and awesome. Looking forward to working with you guys for a long time in the future.
Yeah.
Glad to have you, and glad to have you here, and glad to be a part of the Laughlin production right now.
So groovy.
All right,
thank
thanks.
you.